The chamber is open and full of whispers.
What if the prophecy had named a different child? What if Voldemort, driven by paranoia and ideology, had chosen to destroy not a half-blood boy in Godric's Hollow, but a Muggle-born infant in suburban London? What if the girl who lived wasn't Harry Potter at all, but Hermione Granger? And what if that single choice shattered everything the wizarding world believed about blood magic and destiny? This is the story of how love, Muggle love, the love Voldemort deemed worthless, created the same protection that would define the war. This is the story of how James and Lily Potter, who survived the night they expected to die, chose to adopt the orphaned girl who defeated the Dark Lord. This is the story of Harry Potter, who grew up not as the boy who lived, but as the brother who would die to protect his sister. Welcome to a world where blood purity ideology collapsed the moment a Muggle-born baby survived the killing curse, where the chosen one studied in the library not for grades, but for survival, where the most powerful magic wasn't spoken in ancient rune or cast with elder wands. It was the simple, devastating choice of parents who stood between their daughter and death. Let's begin on the night that changed everything. October 31st, 1981. The prophecy that twisted fate. The prophecy came in fragments. Sybil Trelawney, in her dusty tower at Hogwarts, spoke the first words to Albus Dumbledore in late 1980. Her voice took on that hollow, otherworldly quality that marked true prophecy, and she said, "The one with the power to vanquish the Dark Lord approaches. Born to those of no magical standing, born as the seventh moon rises, and the Dark Lord shall mark them as his equal. But they shall possess power the Dark Lord knows not." Dumbledore listened, his expression grave. Born to those of no magical standing. Not pure bloods who had defied Voldemort 3 times. Not half-bloods or even Muggle-borns with wizarding relatives. No magical standing at all. Muggles. The prophecy continued in pieces over the following months. Trelawney spoke in dreams, in trances, in moments between sleep and waking. Dumbledore collected the fragments like shattered glass, trying to see the whole picture, and either must die at the hand of the other, for neither can live while the other survives. Severus Snape, still Voldemort's servant in those days, overheard portions of the prophecy. He reported back to his master, as he always did. But Snape's information was incomplete. He heard "born to those of no magical standing," and "seventh moon rises," and "power the Dark Lord knows not." He did not hear the complete prophecy. He did not understand its full meaning. Neither did Voldemort. But what he heard was enough to ignite his paranoia. A child born to Muggles. A child who would have power he lacked. A child who could vanquish him. The idea was absurd, offensive, impossible. Voldemort had built his entire ideology on the supremacy of magical blood. Pure bloods ruled. Half-bloods like himself could achieve greatness through power and cunning. But Muggle-borns? They were mud in the blood, thieves of magic, unworthy of the gifts they stole. And Muggles themselves? They were less than animals. They were nothing. Yet the prophecy haunted him. Because buried deep beneath his ideology, beneath decades of murder and dark magic, beneath the fractured soul he'd torn apart to achieve immortality, Tom Riddle remembered being abandoned by his Muggle father. He remembered his mother dying rather than live for him. He remembered the orphanage where no one loved him, where Muggle children feared and hated him. What if his ideology was wrong? What if blood didn't matter? What if a Muggle-born could truly defeat him? He could not allow the possibility to exist, even as a rumor, even as a threat so distant it might never materialize. Voldemort began his research. His Death Eaters brought him intelligence about Muggle-born children. Peter Pettigrew, the rat who'd infiltrated the Order of the Phoenix, proved especially useful. Pettigrew had access to information about families, about births, about infants displaying accidental magic earlier than normal. And then Pettigrew brought him a name, Hermione Granger, born September 19th, 1979, to David and Helen Granger, both dentists, both Muggles, both completely unaware that their daughter was magical. But the magical world knew. Ministry records showed that Hermione Granger had displayed accidental magic at 6 months old, impossibly early. Lights flickered when she cried. Objects floated toward her when she reached for them. The Ministry's monitoring charms detected magical discharges from the Granger home with unusual frequency. Voldemort studied the dates. September 19th, the 7th moon. He consulted ancient calendars, magical timekeeping systems that counted months differently than Muggles. In some traditions, September was the 7th month when counting from the spring equinox. In others, 7th moon referred not to a calendar month, but to the 7th month of magical manifestation, the 7th month since the child's magic first appeared. He bent the prophecy to fit his target. As he had done with every piece of magic he'd ever encountered, Voldemort twisted the words until they meant what he needed them to mean. Hermione Granger, a Muggle-born infant. The child the prophecy described. She had to die. The Potters, meanwhile, were in hiding. James and Lily Potter and their infant son Harry had gone into protective custody in August 1981, after Dumbledore warned them that they might be Voldemort's targets. The prophecy Dumbledore knew, the original prophecy about a child born at the end of July to parents who had thrice defied Voldemort, could describe the Potter's son. It could also describe the Longbottom's son, Neville. Dumbledore cast the Fidelius charm on the Potter's location. Sirius Black, James's best friend, was the obvious choice for Secret Keeper. But Sirius suggested a change. "Make me a decoy," he argued. "Everyone knows I'm James's best friend. They'll come after me first. Use Peter instead. No one would suspect him." James trusted Sirius. Sirius trusted Peter. They made Peter Pettigrew the Secret Keeper. It should have been the decision that got them killed. In another timeline, in the world as it was meant to unfold, Peter Pettigrew would betray the Potter's location to Voldemort within weeks. Voldemort would go to Godric's Hollow. James would die in the hallway. Lily would die protecting Harry. And Harry would become the boy who lived. But in this timeline, Voldemort wasn't hunting the Potters. He was hunting the Grangers. And Peter Pettigrew, who had access to Order intelligence about Muggle-born families, who knew where the Ministry tracked accidental magic discharges, who could obtain addresses from Ministry records he had no business accessing. Peter Pettigrew gave Voldemort exactly what he wanted. The address of the Granger family home. October 31st, 1981. The attack David and Helen Granger were preparing for Halloween. It was early evening, just after 6 o'clock. The sun had set an hour before, and the suburban London street where they lived was quiet. A few children were already out trick-or-treating, accompanied by parents, dressed as ghosts and witches and superheroes. Inside the Granger home, Helen was in the kitchen preparing dinner. David was in the living room, setting out a bowl of candy by the front door for trick-or-treaters. Upstairs in the nursery, 15-month-old Hermione was playing in her crib, babbling to herself, making a stuffed otter float above her head without realizing she was doing magic. David Granger was 29 years old. He'd grown up working class, the first in his family to attend university, and he'd worked himself ragged to become a dentist. He believed absolutely in the power of education, in working hard, in building a better life than the one you were born into. He'd married Helen 3 years ago. They'd bought this house 2 years ago. Hermione had been born 16 months ago. Everything was exactly as he'd planned. Everything was perfect. Helen Granger was 27. She'd loved reading since childhood, had met David at university, had wanted children immediately. When Hermione was born, Helen had chosen the name carefully. Hermione, from Shakespeare's The Winter's Tale. A character who was lost and then found, who suffered but survived, who was strong and clever and good. Helen had inscribed her own copy of the play, "For our Hermione, who will be all of these things and more." Strange things happened around their daughter. Impossible things. Lights flickered. Objects moved. Helen's wedding ring had once floated off the nightstand and landed in Hermione's outstretched hand. They'd told themselves there were explanations. Electrical problems. Coincidence. Anything but magic. But Helen suspected. Deep down, in a place she didn't examine too closely, Helen Granger knew her daughter was something extraordinary. She was in the kitchen when she heard the front door explode inward. The sound was like a bomb detonating. The entire house shook. Helen dropped the pan she was holding and ran toward the living room, screaming David's name. David stood in the hallway, frozen, staring at the figure standing where the front door used to be. Voldemort looked like something that had crawled out of a grave. His face was pale, skull-like, with red eyes that burned with cold fury. He wore black robes that seemed to absorb the light. Behind him, Peter Pettigrew cowered, his rat-like face twitching with fear, and something else, satisfaction. He'd delivered the target. "Stand aside, Muggle," Voldemort said. His voice was high and cold. "Your daughter is mine." David Granger had no idea what was happening. He didn't know about magic, about wizards, about prophecies or dark lords or the war being fought in a world parallel to his own. He only knew that something inhuman was standing in his house, threatening his daughter. He didn't run. He didn't beg. He stepped forward, putting himself between the monster and the stairs that led to Hermione's nursery. "No," David said. His voice shook, but he didn't move. "You'll have to go through me." Voldemort raised his wand. Avada Kedavra. Green light filled the hallway. David Granger fell, dead before he hit the floor. Helen heard her husband die. She heard his body hit the ground. She ran to the stairs, knowing she couldn't fight, knowing she couldn't win, knowing only that her daughter was upstairs and something evil was coming. She reached the nursery 30 seconds before Voldemort did. She slammed the door, pushed a dresser against it with strength she didn't know she possessed. Hermione looked up at her mother, brown eyes wide, sensing the fear. The door exploded into splinters. The dresser flew across the room and crashed into the wall. Voldemort stepped through the wreckage, his wand raised, his red eyes fixed on the crib where Hermione stood, clutching the bars, not crying yet, but about to. Helen Granger threw herself in front of the crib. She spread her arms wide, making herself a barrier between the monster and her child. "Please," she said. Her voice broke. "Please, not Hermione. Not my baby. Take me. Kill me. Please." "Stand aside, foolish woman," Voldemort said. He sounded almost bored. "I have no interest in your life. Stand aside and you may live." He was giving her a choice. He didn't have to. He could have killed her with a flick of his wand, could have blasted her aside as he had the door, but he offered her the chance to live, to step away, to abandon her daughter. It was the same choice he'd given Lily Potter in another timeline, the choice Snape had begged him to offer, hoping to save the woman he'd loved since childhood. The choice that, when refused, would create the most powerful protective magic in existence. Helen Granger looked at the monster threatening her daughter. She looked at Hermione, her impossible, magical, perfect daughter, and she made her choice. "No," Helen said. "Never. Avada Kedavra." Helen Granger died standing. Her body fell forward, draping over the crib, her arms still spread as if she could shield Hermione even in death. Voldemort stepped over her corpse. He looked down at the baby who was now crying, terrified, reaching up with her small hands as if she could push him away. "The mudblood who would defeat me," Voldemort whispered. "We cannot have that." He raised his wand. He spoke the curse that had never failed him, the curse that had killed more people than he could count, the curse that was his signature and his proof that he had conquered death itself. Avada Kedavra. The green light struck Hermione Granger's outstretched right hand, the hand she'd raised instinctively, the hand her mother had been holding seconds before, and something impossible happened. The curse rebounded. Ancient magic, older than wands, older than spells, older than the wizarding world itself, activated in that moment. Helen Granger had been given a choice. She could have lived. She'd been offered the chance to step aside, to save herself. And she'd refused. She'd chosen death when she could have chosen life. And she'd done it for one reason only: love. Her love for Hermione, given freely, given sacrificially, given without hesitation or condition, created protection more powerful than any ward, any charm, any defensive spell ever invented. The killing curse couldn't penetrate that protection. It struck love made manifest and shattered. The rebound caught Voldemort in the chest. His body, already unstable from the 5 Horcruxes he'd created, couldn't withstand the backlash. The killing curse tore through him. His flesh dissolved. His bones turned to ash. His scream of rage and agony shook the house. But Voldemort had spent years making himself immortal. His soul, fractured and fragmented, couldn't die completely. As his body destroyed itself, a piece of that shattered soul, unstable, seeking an anchor, desperate for any living vessel, latched onto the only living thing in the room. It latched on to Hermione Granger. The magic burned her palm where the curse had struck. The lightning bolt scar formed instantly, a mark that would never fade, red and raised and exactly the shape of the spell that should have killed her. Then the house fell silent. Peter Pettigrew, who'd been standing in the hallway, who'd watched his master die, who'd betrayed innocent people to their deaths, turned and ran. He dissipated before the echoes of Voldemort's scream faded. He would go into hiding, would fake his own death, would spend the next 12 years as a rat, and no one would know he'd been there that night. Hermione Granger cried in her crib, hurt and terrified and confused. Her right palm burned. Her mother's body lay across the bars of the crib, Her father's body lay in the hallway downstairs. The Muggle-born girl who lived had survived the killing curse, and the wizarding world would never be the same. The aftermath, discovery, the explosion of magic that occurred when Voldemort's curse rebounded was massive. It registered on every monitoring charm Dumbledore had set up across Britain. In his office at Hogwarts, Albus Dumbledore felt the wards shiver and scream. He looked at his instruments, the delicate silver devices that spun and smoked and sang when dark magic was detected, and watched them all react at once. Something catastrophic had just happened. Dumbledore was moving before he consciously decided to act. He grabbed his wand, his traveling cloak, and Fox's tail feather for an emergency portkey. He apparated to the coordinates the monitoring charms provided. He arrived in a quiet suburban neighborhood. The house at the end of the street had scorch marks around the doorframe. The front door was gone. Muggle neighbors were emerging from their homes, shouting questions, pulling out their telephones to call emergency services. Dumbledore stunned the nearest observers with a casual wave of his wand. He cast a Notice Me Not charm on the house itself, ensuring that anyone who looked at it would suddenly remember something urgent they needed to do elsewhere. Then he stepped through the ruined doorway. He found David Granger's body in the hallway. The man's eyes were still open, his expression frozen in determination. He died protecting his family. Dumbledore closed the man's eyes gently, murmured a blessing, and continued up the stairs. The nursery door was destroyed. The room was a wreck, furniture thrown about, scorch marks on the walls, the smell of dark magic so thick it made the air taste like copper. Helen Granger's body lay across a crib, and in that crib, a baby cried. Dumbledore approached carefully. He lifted Helen's body with a levitation charm. She deserved more respect than being pushed aside, and laid her gently on the floor. Then he looked at the baby. Hermione Granger looked up at him, with brown eyes full of tears. Her right hand was raised, and on the palm, fresh and angry and still bleeding slightly, was a lightning bolt-shaped scar. Dumbledore's breath caught. He'd seen this before. Or rather, he'd anticipated seeing it, just not on this child, not in this house, not under these circumstances. "Oh, my dear child," Dumbledore whispered. He reached into the crib and lifted Hermione carefully. She was so small, 15 months old. She'd just watched her parents die. She'd just survived the killing curse. She was the girl who lived. Dumbledore examined the scar on her palm. The magic radiating from it was complex. Protective enchantments woven into the tissue itself, powered by her mother's sacrifice, similar to what should have protected Harry Potter if the prophecy had played out differently. But there was something else. A darkness curled at the edges of the scar, a presence that felt wrong. Horcrux, Dumbledore thought. Voldemort's soul had been so unstable that fragments could break off accidentally. When the killing curse rebounded, when Voldemort's body was destroyed, a piece of his soul must have latched onto Hermione. She was carrying a fragment of the Dark Lord inside her. Dumbledore's mind raced through implications. The girl would have a connection to Voldemort. She might speak Parseltongue. She might see his thoughts, feel his emotions. She was a living Horcrux, which meant that to truly kill Voldemort, eventually, the Horcrux inside her would have to be destroyed. But that was a problem for later. For now, Dumbledore needed to save this child. Muggle sirens wailed in the distance. Police, ambulances, fire trucks responding to reports of an explosion. Dumbledore needed to move quickly. He conjured a baby carrier, settled Hermione into it gently, and cast preservation charms on the bodies of David and Helen Granger. They deserved a proper burial. Their family deserved answers, or at least the illusion of answers that would let them grieve. The Ministry's obliviators arrived 10 minutes later. Dumbledore had already contacted them via Patronus. They set to work immediately, modifying memories, creating a cover story. A gas explosion, they decided. Tragic accident. 2 parents killed. Baby found miraculously unharmed in her crib. The Muggle authorities would investigate and find nothing suspicious. Just faulty gas lines and terrible luck. The extended Granger family, an aunt in Leeds, elderly grandparents in Bristol, would be told that Hermione had died in the explosion as well. It was kinder than the truth. It was necessary for the statute of secrecy. The magical world couldn't risk Muggles knowing that a dark wizard had murdered 2 of their own. But Dumbledore had Hermione. He held the 15-month-old girl who'd just become the most famous witch in Britain, and he needed to decide what to do with her. She needed a family. She needed protection. She needed people who could raise her in the magical world, who could help her understand what she was and what she'd survived. She needed the Potters. November 1st, 1981. The Potters, James and Lily Potter, were in the kitchen of their home in Godric's Hollow when Dumbledore's Patronus arrived. The silver phoenix materialized above the table where they were having breakfast with 18-month-old Harry and delivered its message in Dumbledore's grave voice. Voldemort attacked last night. He is gone. Come to Hogwarts immediately. There is a child who needs you. James and Lily stared at each other in shock. Voldemort was gone? Attacked who? What child? They gathered Harry, bundled him into warm clothes, and apparated to Hogwarts within 15 minutes. Dumbledore met them in his office. He looked exhausted, older than they'd ever seen him. Fawkes was singing softly on his perch, healing song, meant to soothe trauma. And in a conjured cradle beside Dumbledore's desk, a baby girl slept fitfully. Who is she? Lily asked immediately, moving toward the cradle. Her name is Hermione Granger, Dumbledore said. Last night, Voldemort attacked her family. Both of her parents were murdered. Hermione survived the killing curse. Silence. James felt his stomach drop. Lily made a small, wounded sound. How? James asked. How did she survive? The same way your son would have survived had Voldemort attacked you instead, Dumbledore said. He explained quickly. The prophecy, Voldemort's misinterpretation, his obsession with destroying a Muggle-born child, the Granger's sacrifice, the protective magic, the rebound that destroyed Voldemort's body. She's the girl who lived, Lily whispered. She was staring at Hermione, at the tiny sleeping child who just lost everything. Yes, Dumbledore said, which is why she needs protection, care, a family who understands the magical world and can help her navigate what's coming. Where are her relatives? James asked. Surely she has grandparents, aunts, uncles, all Muggles, Dumbledore said. And I cannot place her with them. She'll be famous. Every witch and wizard in Britain will know her name by tomorrow. She needs a magical family. He paused. I thought of you. Lily was already beside the cradle looking down at Hermione. The little girl stirred in her sleep, whimpering. Her right hand was wrapped in bandages. Dumbledore had treated the burn where the curse struck, but the scar would remain. You want us to adopt her? Lily said softly. I'm asking if you would consider it, Dumbledore said. I know it's an enormous request. You have your own son to think about. You've just survived a war yourselves. But this child needs a home, and I cannot think of anyone better suited to raise her than you. James looked at his wife. Lily was still staring at Hermione, and James could see the decision forming in her eyes. Lily had always had a soft heart for children, for people who needed help, for anyone who'd been wronged by the world's cruelty. She'd grown up watching her sister Petunia reject everything magical, reject Lily herself. She'd fought in a war to protect people like Hermione, Muggle-borns, half-bloods, anyone Voldemort deemed unworthy. And now there was a Muggle-born baby who'd survived the killing curse, who'd lost both parents, who'd been marked by Voldemort the same way Harry might have been. Yes, Lily said. She didn't look at James, didn't ask his opinion, just said the word like it was the only possible answer. Yes, we'll take her. Lily, James started. We'll take her, Lily repeated, turning to face him. Her green eyes were fierce. James, her parents died protecting her. Muggles, who didn't have magic, who couldn't fight back, who died because they loved their daughter more than their own lives. How can we not honor that? How can we not give her the safety they died trying to provide? James Potter was 21 years old. He'd married at 19. He'd had a son at 20. He'd spent 2 years in hiding, fighting a war, watching friends die. He was young and scared and traumatized and trying desperately to build a normal life. But he was also James Potter. And James Potter had built his entire identity on standing up to Voldemort's ideology, on proving that blood purity was a lie, on protecting people who couldn't protect themselves. You're right, James said. He crossed to Lily and put his arm around her shoulders. Together, they looked down at Hermione. We'll take her. There are complications, Dumbledore warned. Hermione won't be protected by blood wards at your home. She shares no blood relation with you. She'll need other protections, and she's famous now. The girl who lived. People will want to meet her, touch her, use her for their own purposes. Raising her will be difficult. We don't care, Lily said. She's a child who needs a family. That's all that matters. There's one more thing, Dumbledore said. He looked grim. The curse that struck Hermione left a scar. I believe it also left something else. A fragment of Voldemort's soul. The words hung in the air like poison. James felt Lily stiffen beside him. A Horcrux, Lily breathed. Accidental, but yes, Dumbledore said. Voldemort had already split his soul multiple times. The rebound of the killing curse, combined with the destruction of his body, likely caused an additional fracture. That fragment latched onto Hermione. Can we remove it? James demanded. Can we? Not yet, Dumbledore said. The magic is too complex, and the soul fragment is too intertwined with Hermione's own life force. Attempting to remove it now would kill her, but it means she may have a connection to Voldemort. She may speak Parseltongue. She may, when Voldemort eventually returns, be able to sense his thoughts and emotions. When he returns, Lily's voice was sharp. You think he's coming back? I'm certain of it, Dumbledore said. Voldemort created multiple Horcruxes. His soul is anchored to this world. Someday he will find a way to return, and when he does, he will come for Hermione. Silence. James looked at the sleeping baby, at the bandage wrapped around her tiny hand, at the way she curled into herself like she was trying to stay warm. She looked so fragile, so small. Then we'll protect her, James said, however long it takes. Whatever she needs, we'll keep her safe, and we'll teach her, Lily added. We'll make sure she's ready when the time comes. We'll give her every advantage, every tool, every piece of knowledge that might help her survive. Dumbledore smiled. A sad, weary smile, but genuine. Then let us begin the adoption process. It will require ministry approval, blood magic to bind her to your family name, and a great deal of paperwork. But if you're certain, we're certain, James and Lily said together. At that moment, 18-month-old Harry, who'd been sitting quietly in a chair, magically restrained so he wouldn't toddle into danger, made a noise. He'd been watching the adults talk, not understanding the words but sensing the emotion. Now he pointed at the cradle where Hermione slept. Baby, Harry said. It was one of his few words. Baby sister. Lily's eyes filled with tears. She crossed to Harry, lifted him into her arms, and carried him to the cradle. Yes, darling, she whispered. Baby sister. Her name is Hermione, and we're going to take care of her. Always. Harry reached out and patted Hermione's bandaged hand gently. Hermione stirred, opened her brown eyes, and looked at the strange boy touching her. She didn't cry. She just stared at him with solemn curiosity. Hi, Harry said. It was the beginning of a bond that would define both their lives. The adoption magic and law. The magical adoption process took 3 weeks. The ministry had to approve the transfer of custody, normally a formality but complicated by Hermione's fame. Every pureblood family with a genealogical connection to the Grangers, no matter how distant, petitioned for custody. The Malfoys, who had no connection at all, still submitted paperwork claiming that such an important child should be raised by a proper wizarding family. Dumbledore's testimony crushed those attempts. He argued that the Potters were the ideal choice, young enough to raise a child, wealthy enough to provide for her, connected enough to protect her from those who'd want to use her, and most importantly, their ideology directly opposed everything Voldemort stood for. Raising the Muggle-born girl who lived alongside their own pureblood son would be a statement, a declaration that blood meant nothing, that family was about choice and love. The Minister of Magic at the time, Millicent Bagnold, approved the adoption personally. The Potters were granted legal custody on November 20th, 1981. The magical binding ritual occurred on November 21st at Potter Manor. James and Lily stood in the ritual circle they'd drawn in the library. Hermione was in Lily's arms, calm now, having spent 3 weeks adjusting to her new family. Harry stood with Sirius Black, who'd been invited to witness, the child's godfather, James's best friend, the man who would have raised Harry if the prophecy had gone differently. The ritual required specific words and specific magic. Lily spoke first. I, Lily Evans Potter, take Hermione Jean Granger as my daughter. I claim her as my own, to love and protect, to raise and guide, to cherish as I cherish the child of my blood. Magic shimmered in the air. Green light, warm and gentle, wrapped around Lily and Hermione. James spoke next. I, James Fleamont Potter, take Hermione Jean Granger as my daughter. I claim her as my own, to love and protect, to raise and guide, to cherish as I cherish the child of my blood. Red light joined the green, twining together, wrapping around all 3 of them. Then came the formal binding. James drew his wand and carefully touched it to Hermione's forehead. By magic and by will, by choice and by love, I name you Hermione Jean Granger Potter. You are heir to the House of Potter. You are my daughter." The lights flared brilliant gold. Hermione giggled, the first happy sound anyone had heard from her since the attack. The magic settled into her skin, invisible but present. The adoption was complete. The Potter family ring, an heirloom that had passed through generations, sat on a cushion beside the ritual circle. According to tradition, the ring recognized true Potters, those bound by blood or by magic equally. James had worn it until tonight. Now he picked it up and held it carefully. "We'll keep this for you," he told Hermione, even though she was too young to understand. "When you're 11, when you go to Hogwarts, we'll give it to you, and it will accept you, because you're our daughter." The ring would indeed accept her. Magic doesn't discriminate between blood relation and chosen family. Love is love. The first year, learning to be a family, the Potters took Hermione home to Potter Manor, a sprawling estate protected by every ward and charm James and Lily could imagine. Dumbledore added his own protections: Fidelius charm with himself as secret keeper, anti-apparition jinxes, alarm spells that would alert him if anyone with dark magic on their person approached. "You're creating a fortress," Sirius observed, watching them work. "She's worth protecting," Lily said simply. The first months were chaos. Harry, 18 months old, was confused by the sudden appearance of a sister. He'd been the center of his parents' attention, and now there was another baby who needed even more care. Hermione cried at night, nightmares, trauma manifesting in the only way a 15-month-old could express it. Lily stayed up with her, holding her, singing to her, until the crying stopped. James worried constantly. Every noise made him reach for his wand. Every stranger who approached them in Diagon Alley made him step between his children and danger. The war might be over, but Voldemort's followers were still free. Death Eaters who'd never been caught. Pure-blood fanatics who'd see Hermione as a symbol of everything they hated. "You can't protect them from everything," Sirius told him one night, after James had spent 3 hours checking and rechecking wards. "Watch me," James said. Harry's jealousy lasted approximately 2 weeks. Then something shifted. Maybe it was the night he heard Hermione crying and toddled into her room, wanting to help. Maybe it was the day Lily explained that Hermione's mummy and daddy had died, and Harry, who'd recently learned what death meant after their cat had passed away, understood that his sister was sad. Whatever the cause, Harry stopped seeing Hermione as competition and started seeing her as someone who needed him. He brought her toys. He patted her head when she cried. He told her, in his limited vocabulary, that it was okay, and she was safe, and he was here. When Hermione learned to walk at 16 months, Harry walked beside her, holding her hand, making sure she didn't fall. When she started talking, Harry taught her words: Mummy, Daddy, Harry, home. Lily watched her son transform into a protective older brother and felt something in her chest swell. This was what she'd hoped for. This was why she'd said yes so quickly when Dumbledore asked. Not just to save Hermione, but to give Harry a sibling, a companion, someone to love and protect. James had a different realization. He watched Harry with Hermione and saw himself with Sirius at that age. The fierce loyalty, the protective instincts, the sense that this person was his to defend. Harry was becoming the boy James had been, but with one crucial difference. Harry's protectiveness came from abundance, not lack. He wasn't protecting Hermione because he had to, because no one else would. He was protecting her because he wanted to, because he loved her, because they were family. Hermione grew. She was a quiet baby, watchful, taking in everything with those solemn brown eyes. She didn't smile as much as Harry had at that age. She startled easily. Loud noises made her cry. But slowly, gradually, she learned that she was safe, that the people around her loved her, that home meant warmth and books and laughter and 2 parents who would never ever abandon her. Her first word was Mama. She said it to Lily while they were reading together in the library, and Lily burst into tears of joy. Her second word was Harry. She said it when her brother brought her a toy, and Harry's face lit up like Christmas. The scar on her palm faded from angry red to pale silver. It would never disappear completely. The killing curse left permanent marks, but it became part of her, a reminder, a symbol, the place where her mother's love had manifested as protection strong enough to defeat the Dark Lord. Lily made a locket for Hermione when she turned 2. Inside were tiny moving photographs. One of Hermione with James, Lily, and Harry, all of them smiling. One of David and Helen Granger on their wedding day, pulled from the few possessions the ministry had recovered from the Granger home. "You have 2 families," Lily told Hermione, fastening the locket around her neck. "The family you were born to, and the family you're growing up with. Both of them loved you. Both of them are yours." Hermione touched the locket with her small fingers. She didn't fully understand yet. But she would, someday, and when she did, she'd treasure this gift more than anything else she owned. The Potters celebrated Hermione's 2nd birthday on September 19, 1981, exactly 1 year after the Grangers had celebrated her 1st birthday, 6 weeks before they died. It was a small party, just the Potters, Sirius, Remus Lupin, and a few other close friends. Harry insisted on helping Hermione blow out the candles. They made a wish together, 2 toddlers who didn't understand the significance of wishes, but who loved each other fiercely. Lily took photographs. James made a fool of himself performing magic tricks that kept backfiring comically, making both children shriek with laughter. Sirius gave Hermione a toy broomstick that hovered 3 feet off the ground, which Lily immediately declared was far too dangerous, and confiscated. It was a good day. A normal day. The kind of day that made Lily think maybe, just maybe, they could give these children the childhood they deserved despite everything that had happened. But Lily also knew the truth. Hermione was the girl who lived. Voldemort would return someday. The prophecy hung over them like a shadow. For now, though, Hermione was 2 years old, laughing at her brother's antics, eating cake with her hands, surrounded by people who loved her. For now, she was safe. For now, that had to be enough. The early years, growing up Potter Hermione Jean Granger Potter, turned 3 years old in September 1982, and by then she'd been a Potter longer than she'd been a Granger. She had no conscious memories of David and Helen Granger. She'd been 15 months old when they died, too young for memory to form properly. What she had instead were fragments, the sense of being held, warmth, a woman's voice singing something she couldn't quite recall, ghost memories that might have been real or might have been dreams or might have been wishes. She knew she was adopted. James and Lily never hid it. They'd decided early on that honesty was better than discovery, that Hermione should grow up knowing the truth rather than learning it as a betrayal later. So from the time she could understand language, they told her stories. "You were born to a mummy and daddy who loved you very much," Lily would say, holding Hermione on her lap in the library, the locket around Hermione's neck. Their names were David and Helen Granger. They were very brave. When something bad tried to hurt you, they protected you. They died keeping you safe. "Where are they now?" Hermione asked. She was 4 by then, old enough to understand death in the abstract. Grandpa Potter had died the previous year, and Harry had cried, and everyone had been sad. "They're gone," Lily said gently. "Like Grandpa is gone. But they loved you so much, Hermione, and your daddy and I, we chose to be your family. We wanted you. We love you just as much as we love Harry." "Do you love me the same?" Hermione asked. It was the question every adopted child asks eventually. "Even though I'm not from you?" Lily pulled Hermione close, pressing a kiss to her bushy brown hair. "I love you exactly the same. Blood doesn't make family, sweetheart. Love makes family. And I love you more than anything in the world." Hermione believed her. How could she not? Lily tucked her in every night, read her stories, healed her scraped knees with magic, made her laugh with silly faces. James threw her in the air and caught her, taught her to fly on a toy broomstick, called her my brilliant girl every time she asked a question. And Harry was always there. Her brother, her best friend, her protector. The twin-like bond between Harry and Hermione developed naturally over those early years. They weren't actually twins. Harry was 10 months younger, having been born in July 1980, while Hermione was born in September 1979. But they functioned like twins. They shared a language of glances and half-gestures that excluded everyone else. They played together constantly, Harry building elaborate scenarios with toy dragons and knights, Hermione insisting on historically accurate details even at age 4. They fought occasionally. Hermione would get bossy, Harry would get stubborn. But the fights never lasted more than an hour before one of them apologized. Harry's protective instincts intensified as he grew older. He didn't understand why yet, but he knew that people looked at Hermione differently than they looked at him. When they went to Diagon Alley, strangers would approach and try to touch Hermione's hand, the one with the scar. They'd whisper to each other and point. Some would bow, others would try to take photographs. Harry learned to position himself between his sister and the strangers. He'd glare at adults twice his size, his small face fierce with protective fury. "Leave her alone," he'd say, even though he was only 4 years old. "She doesn't like it." Lily appreciated her son's protectiveness, but she also worried about it. Harry shouldn't have to be Hermione's bodyguard at age 4. "Children should play, not stand guard, Harry, sweetheart," Lily said one evening, after a particularly overwhelming trip to Diagon Alley. "You don't have to protect Hermione from everyone. That's Daddy's job and my job." "But they were bothering her," Harry protested. "They made her scared." "I know, and I'm proud of you for helping. But you're allowed to just be her brother, okay? You don't have to be her guard." Harry considered this. Then he shook his head. "I want to protect her. She's my sister." There was no arguing with that certainty. James, overhearing the conversation, caught Lily's eye and shrugged helplessly. Their son had decided who he was and what he valued. All they could do was make sure he didn't sacrifice his own happiness in the process. Hermione, for her part, adored Harry. He made her laugh when she was sad. He played with her when she was lonely. He taught her things: how to fly, badly since Hermione was terrified of heights, how to sneak extra biscuits from the kitchen, how to tell when their father was about to pull a prank so they could join in or hide as needed. But Hermione also had qualities Harry lacked. She was careful where Harry was reckless. She thought before acting where Harry acted on instinct. And she had an extraordinary hunger for knowledge. The first signs, accidental magic and brilliance, all magical children displayed accidental magic. It was how the ministry tracked Muggle-born children, how Hogwarts found students, how parents knew their offspring had inherited magical ability. But Hermione's accidental magic was unusual in its frequency and precision. At age 3, she made books float to her from across the room. Not just once or twice, but consistently, whenever she wanted to read, and the book was out of reach. James and Lily tested it carefully, leaving books in different locations, watching to see if Hermione would summon them. And every time, the book would lift gently off the shelf, glide through the air, and land in Hermione's outstretched hands. "That's advanced," Remus Lupin observed, watching Hermione summon a copy of The Tales of Beedle the Bard from the top shelf. "Most children just make things explode or levitate randomly. She's controlling the magic. She's been controlling it since she was 6 months old," Lily said quietly. "The ministry records show she was doing accidental magic in her crib before she could even walk. At age 4, Hermione's hair changed color when she was upset. Not just once, the way Harry had made Petunia's awful sweater shrink, but repeatedly. When she was angry, her brown curls would flash red. When she was sad, they'd turn dark blue. When she was frightened, they'd go nearly white. "I don't like it," Hermione said tearfully after her hair turned blue, because she'd seen a spider. "I want it to be normal." "Your hair is beautiful no matter what color," Lily assured her. Though privately she was concerned, that level of emotional magic connection was rare in children so young. It suggested Hermione's magic was deeply tied to her feelings, which could be dangerous if not properly trained. At age 5, Hermione started reading. Not picture books, actual books with complex sentences and advanced vocabulary. She'd taught herself somehow, sounding out words, asking what letters meant, putting pieces together until suddenly she was reading chapter books meant for children twice her age. "Listen to this, Harry," she'd say, sitting beside her brother with a book about magical creatures. "It says dragons can live for hundreds of years, and they can remember everyone who's ever hurt them. Isn't that amazing?" Harry, who preferred action to reading, would nod dutifully and then try to distract her with a game of wizard's chess or flying practice. Hermione's intelligence was obvious to everyone. She asked questions constantly. Why does magic work? Where does it come from? Why can some people do it and others can't? How did the first wizards learn spells if there was no one to teach them? James and Lily answered what they could, but often Hermione's questions went beyond their knowledge. "She's going to be brilliant at Hogwarts," Sirius said proudly. He'd become Uncle Padfoot to both children, and he loved them fiercely. "Top of her year in every subject, I guarantee it." "I'm more worried about the attention she'll get," Lily admitted. "Everyone in the magical world knows who she is. The girl who lived, the mudblood who survived the killing curse. She's going to have people treating her like a celebrity before she's even taken her first class." "Then we prepare her," James said firmly. "We teach her to handle it. We make sure she knows she's more than her fame. But there was another complication. The nightmares. The nightmares. Echoes of darkness. Hermione's nightmares started when she was 4 years old. She'd wake up screaming, crying about green light, about a high cold voice, about something that wanted to hurt her. Lily and James would rush to her room, finding her tangled in her sheets, her scar burning hot on her palm. "It's okay, sweetheart," Lily would whisper, gathering Hermione into her arms. "It was just a dream. You're safe. I'm here." But the nightmares weren't just dreams. Dumbledore had warned them. The Horcrux fragment inside Hermione might create a connection to Voldemort. When he was feeling strong emotions, rage, triumph, hatred, Hermione might sense them. She might see through his eyes, feel what he felt. Voldemort was currently a disembodied spirit, weak and hiding, but he still existed. And occasionally his emotions would bleed through the connection, manifesting in Hermione's dreams as terror and pain. James and Lily didn't tell Hermione about the Horcrux. She was too young. But they taught her occlumency basics, mental exercises disguised as games. "Picture a wall in your mind," James would say. "Put your scary thoughts behind it. Make the wall strong." Hermione, who was bright enough to follow instructions even if she didn't understand why, practiced diligently. The nightmares lessened but never stopped completely. Once a month, sometimes twice, Hermione would wake up screaming. And every time, Harry would appear in her doorway within seconds. "I heard you," Harry would say, padding into her room in his pajamas. He was 6 years old and still afraid of the dark himself, but his sister needed him. "Can I stay?" Hermione would nod, and Harry would climb into bed beside her. They'd curl up together, and somehow, with her brother beside her, the nightmares seemed less real. Lily found them like that one morning, both children asleep in Hermione's bed, Harry's arm thrown protectively over his sister. She took a photograph. The image would sit on her desk for years, physical proof of the bond between her children, the way they protected each other without being asked. Age 7. The truth about the prophecy on Hermione's 7th birthday. James and Lily made a decision they'd been agonizing over for months. They decided to tell her about the prophecy. "She deserves to know," Lily argued. "She's going to hear about it eventually, from classmates, from books, from the prophet. Better she hears it from us, where we can explain it, than from strangers who'll sensationalize it." "She's 7 years old," James protested. "She's a child. Why burden her with this now?" "Because ignorance won't protect her. Knowledge will." They told her on the evening of September 19th, 1986, after the birthday party was over, after Harry had gone to bed, after the house was quiet. They sat with Hermione in the library, her favorite room, surrounded by books, and Lily pulled her into her lap. "Sweetheart, we need to tell you something important," Lily began. "About the night your birth parents died. About why you're famous." Hermione looked up at her mother with solemn brown eyes. "Okay." James took over the explanation, keeping it simple but honest. There had been a prophecy about a child who could defeat Voldemort. The prophecy said this child would be born to parents with no magical standing, Muggles. Voldemort had believed the prophecy was about Hermione, so he'd come to kill her before she could grow powerful enough to threaten him. "But your birth parents protected you," James said. "They chose to die rather than let him hurt you. And their love created magic so powerful that Voldemort's curse couldn't touch you. It bounced back and destroyed him instead." "Is he gone forever?" Hermione asked. Her voice was small. "No," Lily said gently. "We think he'll come back someday. He was very powerful, and he'd made himself hard to kill. But Hermione, listen to me. This doesn't mean you have to fight him. The prophecy says you can defeat him. Not that you must. You get to choose what you do with your life." "What if I can't?" Hermione whispered. "What if he comes back and I'm not strong enough? Then we'll protect you," James said fiercely. "Your mum and I and Harry and everyone who loves you. You're not alone, Hermione. You'll never be alone." Hermione was quiet for a long time, processing. Finally she asked, "Does Harry know?" "Yes," Lily said. "We told him last year he wanted to know why you have nightmares." "What did he say?" Lily smiled despite the heavy conversation. "He said he'd fight Voldemort himself if the bad man tried to hurt you. Then he asked if he could learn to duel so he'd be ready." Hermione almost smiled at that. Of course Harry wanted to fight for her. That was who he was. "I'm scared," Hermione admitted. "I don't want to fight a dark wizard. I just want to read and learn and be normal." "I know, sweetheart," Lily said, hugging her tightly. and most of the time you will be normal. You'll go to school, make friends, learn magic, have fun. The prophecy isn't your whole life. It's just one part of it. But it's an important part, Hermione said. She was 7 years old, but she understood more than most children her age. It's why my real parents died. It's why I'm here. It's why everyone knows my name. Yes, James said honestly. It's important. But so are you. Not because of the prophecy, but because you're you. You're kind and clever and brave. You're our daughter. That matters more than any prophecy. Hermione nodded slowly. She didn't feel better exactly, but she felt less alone. Her parents knew. They'd told her the truth. They'd trusted her with something heavy and frightening, which meant they thought she was strong enough to carry it. Can I go see Harry? Hermione asked. Of course, Lily said. Hermione slipped out of the library and padded upstairs to Harry's room. She opened the door quietly. Harry was asleep, his dark hair messy against the pillow, one arm hanging off the bed. Hermione crossed to him and shook his shoulder gently. Harry, wake up. Harry blinked awake immediately, instantly alert the way he always was when she needed him. Hermione, what's wrong? Mum and Dad told me about the prophecy, she said. The whole thing. Why Voldemort came for me. Harry sat up, rubbing his eyes. Are you okay? I'm scared. Me too, Harry admitted. But we'll figure it out. When we are older, when we go to Hogwarts. We'll learn everything we can and we'll be ready. What if I'm not strong enough? Harry looked at his sister with absolute certainty. You're the strongest person I know. And even if you're not, I'll be strong enough for both of us. Hermione climbed into Harry's bed. They were too old for this, really. But sometimes being close to each other was the only thing that made the fear manageable. They lay side by side, staring at the ceiling. Harry, Hermione said after a while. Yeah? I'm glad you're my brother. I'm glad you're my sister, Harry said. Even if you are bossy. I'm not bossy. I'm thorough. That's what bossy people say. Hermione shoved him, and Harry laughed, and for a moment they were just children again, bickering and giggling in the dark. The prophecy existed. Voldemort existed. Fear existed. But so did this. Siblings who loved each other, who would face anything together, who made each other laugh even when they were terrified. The Potter family dynamic, ages 7 to 10, the years between 7 and 11 were formative for both Potter children. But in different ways, Harry grew into his father's confidence. James taught him to fly properly, not just hovering on toy broomsticks, but actual flying, weaving between trees, diving and climbing, feeling the wind rush past. Harry was a natural. He had his father's reflexes, his mother's instincts, and a joy in flying that was entirely his own. He's going to be Gryffindor Seeker, James predicted proudly after watching 10-year-old Harry catch a falling apple mid-flight. Mark my words. Harry also inherited his father's occasional arrogance, though Lily worked hard to temper it. Being talented doesn't make you better than other people, she'd remind him whenever he got too cocky about his flying skills. It makes you responsible for using that talent well. But Harry was never cruel. He didn't bully or mock those less skilled than himself. The arrogance expressed itself as confidence. I bet I can fly higher than you, rather than, you're rubbish at flying. The difference mattered. Hermione, meanwhile, grew into her brilliance. She read constantly, everything she could find about magic, about history, about the wizarding world she'd be entering someday. She taught herself basic magical theory before she even had a wand. She memorized potion ingredients, wand lore, the properties of magical creatures. She's going to be unbearable when we get to Hogwarts, Harry teased. She'll know more than the professors. I will not, Hermione protested. I just want to be prepared. For what? First year? It's going to be basic stuff. For everything, Hermione said. Her voice was quiet but intense. I need to be ready for everything. Harry understood then. She wasn't studying for grades or approval. She was studying for survival. The prophecy hung over her constantly, and knowledge was her way of fighting back against the fear. The physical contrast between the siblings became more pronounced as they aged. Harry was tall for his age, all gangly limbs and messy black hair that stuck up no matter what he did. He had James's hazel eyes, James's troublemaker grin. He moved with casual grace, the kind of physical confidence that came from never doubting your body would do what you asked. Hermione was smaller, more delicate in appearance. Her hair was a mass of brown curls that she couldn't tame no matter how hard she tried. She had her birth mother's brown eyes, solemn, intelligent, always watching. She moved carefully, thoughtfully, as if analyzing the physical world the way she analyzed books. But despite their physical differences, people who knew them saw the similarity. The way they stood close to each other, the way they communicated without words, the way they automatically positioned themselves to protect each other in crowds. The enchanted coins Lily made for them when they were 8 became precious possessions. The coins were simple magic. When one coin was held tightly, the paired coin would warm in temperature. No messages could be sent. Just a simple signal, "I need you," or "I'm here." Harry kept his coin in his pocket always. Hermione wore hers on a chain around her neck, next to the locket with her family photographs. They used the coins constantly. When Hermione had nightmares and Harry was in his own room, she'd clutch her coin, and within minutes Harry would appear at her door. When Harry got into trouble, usually for pranks that went wrong, he'd hold his coin, and Hermione would come find him before their parents discovered what he'd done. "You two are attached at the hip," Sirius observed, one afternoon, watching them play wizard's chess. Hermione directing strategy, Harry executing moves with dramatic flair. "They're siblings," Lily said. "It's sweet." "It's more than that," Sirius said thoughtfully. "They're I don't know, like two halves of the same person. The way James and I used to be, but more so." Remus, who was visiting for tea, nodded. "Platonic soulmates. It's rare, but it happens. They balance each other perfectly." "Is that healthy?" Lily worried. "Should we encourage them to be more independent?" "Why?" Remus asked gently. "They're happy. They support each other. They make each other better. That's not codependence, Lily. That's love." The question of identity, Granger or Potter. When Hermione turned 9, she asked a question that had been building for years. "Am I really a Potter?" They were in the library again. Always the library where serious conversations happened, where books made Hermione feel safe. James and Lily sat with their daughter, knowing this conversation mattered. "Yes," James said firmly. "You were adopted legally and magically. You're a Potter in every way that counts. But I'm also a Granger," Hermione said. "That was my name first. My real parents, David and Helen, they were Grangers." "You're both," Lily said. "You're Hermione Jean Granger Potter. You carry both names because you belong to both families. But people don't call me Granger Potter," Hermione pointed out. "They call me Hermione Potter, or Hermione Granger, or the girl who lived. Like I don't get to choose." "Then choose," James said. "What do you want to be called?" Hermione thought for a long time. Finally she said, "I want to be Hermione Granger Potter. The whole thing. Because I'm proud of being a Granger. My parents were brave. They were Muggles who died fighting something they couldn't understand. And I'm proud of being a Potter. You chose me, you love me, you've given me everything." "Then that's who you are," Lily said. "Hermione Jean Granger Potter. And anyone who tries to shorten it without permission will answer to your father and me. At Hogwarts, Hermione would introduce herself as Hermione Granger Potter, but most people would call her just Hermione or Granger, or, inevitably, the girl who lived. The media would use Hermione Potter because it connected her to the famous Potter family. But Hermione never let go of the Granger name. It was her connection to David and Helen. Her proof that they'd existed, that they'd loved her enough to die for her. The Potter family ring, which James had kept safe since the adoption ritual, was given to Hermione on her 11th birthday. James and Lily made it a ceremony, just family, in the library, late evening after the birthday party was over. "This ring has been in the Potter family for 8 generations, James said, holding the silver band carefully. It was too large for Hermione's finger now, but magic would make it fit when she was ready to wear it. It recognizes true Potters. Blood or chosen, it doesn't discriminate. When you put this on, it will accept you. Because you're my daughter." James slipped the ring onto Hermione's right hand, not the scarred hand, but the other one. The ring glowed warm gold, rephased itself instantly to fit her finger perfectly, and settled as if it had always belonged there. "It fits," Hermione whispered, staring at the ring. "Of course it fits," Lily said, tears in her eyes. "You're a Potter, sweetheart. The ring knows." Hermione wore the ring constantly after that. It became as much a part of her as the scar on her palm, as much a symbol of who she was. Potter and Granger, chosen and born, magical and Muggle-born. All of it, everything, hers. July 24th, 1991. The Hogwarts letter. The letter arrived for Harry first. on his 11th birthday, delivered by a tawny owl that flew through the open kitchen window during breakfast. Harry tore open the envelope, read the contents, and whooped with joy. "I got in. I'm going to Hogwarts." James and Lily congratulated him, though they'd known he'd be accepted. There was never any doubt. Harry was magical, powerful, exactly the kind of student Hogwarts wanted. Hermione watched from across the table, happy for her brother, but also nervous. Her letter wouldn't come until September 19th, her 11th birthday, which was still months away. She knew she'd be accepted too. The girl who lived couldn't be denied entrance, but part of her worried irrationally that something would go wrong. The weeks between Harry's letter and Hermione's birthday were torture for her. She read Hogwarts, a history cover to cover, 3 times. She memorized the school rules, the layout of the castle, the history of the 4 founders. She practiced wand movements without a wand, preparing for classes she hadn't been accepted to yet. "You're going to make yourself sick," Harry told her one afternoon, finding her surrounded by books in the library. "You're going to get your letter, obviously." "What if I don't?" Hermione asked. The fear was irrational but persistent. "Then I'll refuse to go without you," Harry said immediately. "I'll tell Dumbledore he can keep his Hogwarts if you're not invited." "You can't do that. Watch me." Hermione smiled despite her anxiety. This was Harry, loyal to the point of recklessness, willing to sacrifice anything for the people he loved. September 19th finally arrived. Hermione woke early, too nervous to sleep. She went downstairs to find the entire family already awake. James making birthday pancakes, Lily decorating with magical streamers that spelled out, "Happy Birthday, Hermione." Harry attempting to wrap a present and failing spectacularly. "Happy birthday, sweetheart," Lily said, pulling Hermione into a hug. They ate breakfast. They opened presents. Harry gave her a beautiful leather-bound journal for taking notes at school. James and Lily gave her a complete set of Hogwarts textbooks, 1st through 7th year, because Hermione wanted to read ahead. Sirius gave her a joke wand that turned into a rubber chicken when waved. And then, at precisely 9 o'clock, an owl swooped through the window. Hermione's hands shook as she took the envelope. The heavy parchment, the emerald green ink, the wax seal with the Hogwarts crest. She opened it carefully, pulled out the letter, and read, "Dear Miss Granger Potter, we are pleased to inform you that you have been accepted at Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry. Please find enclosed a list of all necessary books and equipment. Term begins on September 1st. We await your owl by no later than July 31st. Yours sincerely, Minerva McGonagall." Deputy Headmistress Hermione stared at the letter. She read it twice, then a 3rd time, making sure she hadn't misunderstood. "I got in," she whispered. "I'm going to Hogwarts." "Of course you are," James said, grinning. "Did you think they'd reject the girl who lived?" "I thought maybe they'd realize they made a mistake," Hermione admitted. "That I'm not special enough." Lily knelt in front of her daughter, taking Hermione's face in her hands. "You are special. Not because of the scar or the prophecy, or what you survived. You're special because you're brilliant and kind and brave. Hogwarts is lucky to have you." Hermione hugged her mother tightly, then her father, then Harry. The relief was overwhelming. She was going to Hogwarts, with Harry, together. "We need to go to Diagon Alley," Harry said excitedly. "Get your wand, get your robes, get everything." "We'll go next week," Lily promised. "Give your sister a day to enjoy her birthday before we throw her into shopping chaos." But Hermione was already making lists in her head. Books she needed, supplies she wanted, questions she had about wand lore and wand selection. Her anxiety had transformed into excitement. She was going to Hogwarts. She was going to learn real magic. She was going to become powerful enough to protect herself and the people she loved. Diagon Alley, wands and warnings. They went to Diagon Alley a week later. James, Lily, Harry, and Hermione. Sirius came too, declaring that he wouldn't miss the kids getting their first real wands for anything. The leaky cauldron was crowded. When the Potter family walked through, conversation stopped. People stared. Hermione felt the weight of their attention immediately. The whispers, the pointing, the way strangers' eyes focused on her scarred palm. Harry moved closer to his sister instinctively, positioning himself slightly in front of her. Sirius noticed and grinned. The kid had good instincts. They went to Gringotts first, withdrawing gold from the Potter vault. Hermione stared at the piles of galleons with wide eyes. She knew her family was wealthy, but seeing the physical gold made it real. The goblins treated her with surprising respect. bowing slightly when she approached the counter. "They know who you are," Lily murmured to her. "The goblins respect power and survival. You defeated Voldemort. To them, that matters more than blood status. Flourish and blots was next." Hermione could have spent hours there, examining every book, reading jacket descriptions, making lists of titles to buy later. James had to physically steer her toward the required textbook section. "You can come back," he promised. "We'll get your required books now, and you can browse later." Hermione reluctantly focused on the list. The Standard Book of Spells. Grade 1, A History of Magic. Magical Theory. A Beginner's Guide to Transfiguration. She wanted to buy every book in the store. She settled for the required texts plus 3 extras. Defensive Magical Theory. Hogwarts: A History. She'd read the library copy but wanted her own. And Famous Witches and Wizards of the 20th Century. "That last one has a chapter about you," the shopkeeper said helpfully. Hermione frowned. "About me? About the girl who lived, yes. Published last year. Quite popular." Hermione bought it anyway, morbidly curious about what strangers had written about her life. Madame Malkin's robe shop was less interesting, but necessary. Both children needed school robes, though Harry complained about standing still for measurements. A pale, pointed-faced boy was being fitted at the same time, Draco Malfoy, though they didn't know his name yet. The boy stared at Hermione with undisguised curiosity. "You're her," he said. "The girl who lived. Hermione Potter." Hermione corrected quietly. "My father says you're a mudblood," Malfoy continued conversationally. "Says it's an insult to magic that someone with dirty blood is famous." Harry moved before anyone else could react. He stepped between Malfoy and Hermione, his expression dangerous despite being 11 years old. "Say that word again," Harry said. His voice was quiet, which somehow made it more threatening. "Go ahead." Malfoy paled slightly. "It's just what my father— I don't care what your father says. Insult my sister again, and you'll regret it." James was there in seconds, one hand on Harry's shoulder. "Easy, son." He looked at Malfoy with cold eyes. "Your father is Lucius Malfoy, I assume. Tell him James Potter suggests he teach his son better manners before sending him to school. Come on, kids. We're done here." They left quickly. Outside, Hermione was shaking, not with fear exactly, but with anger and humiliation. Mudblood. She knew the word. She'd read about it. Slur for Muggle-borns implying contaminated blood. Lesser status. "He's an idiot," Harry said fiercely. "Everyone like him is an idiot. Blood doesn't mean anything." "It means something to them," Hermione said quietly. "Then they're wrong," Harry insisted. "You're the girl who lived. You defeated Voldemort. What have pure bloods like Malfoy ever done except be born?" "Harry's right," Lily said, kneeling to meet Hermione's eyes. "You're going to hear that word again, sweetheart. At Hogwarts, from children who've been raised with their parents' prejudices. You need to know that it's a lie. Your blood is not dirty. Your heritage is not shameful. You're powerful and brilliant, and you come from parents who loved you enough to die for you. That's worth more than 1,000 generations of pure blood lineage." Hermione nodded, trying to believe it, but the word had already lodged in her mind like a splinter. Mudblood. Dirty blood. Less than. Ollivanders. The wand chooses they saved Ollivanders for last. The wand shop was dim and dusty, thousands of narrow boxes stacked to the ceiling. An old man with wide, pale eyes appeared from the back of the shop. "Ah," Garrick Ollivander said. His voice was soft, dreamy. "The Potter children. I wondered when I'd be seeing you." "We need wands," James said. "Both of them." Of course, of course." Ollivander approached Hermione first, his strange eyes studying her with unnerving intensity. "Hermione Granger Potter. The girl who lived. I remember every wand I've ever sold, you know. I sold your mother's wand, Lily Potter, née Evans. 10¼ inches. Willow, swishy, excellent for charm work." "You knew my birth mother too?" Hermione asked quietly. Ollivander's expression flickered. "Ah, no. I'm afraid I didn't have the pleasure. David and Helen Granger were Muggles, but their daughter—" He measured Hermione's arm, her hand, the distance from shoulder to fingertip. "Let us see what chooses you." He brought boxes down from the shelves. Hermione tried wand after wand. Each time she waved one, Ollivander would snatch it back immediately. "No, no, definitely not. Or dreadful, absolutely dreadful." After the 15th failed attempt, Ollivander paused. He stared at Hermione thoughtfully, then climbed his ladder and retrieved a box from the very top shelf. Dust covered it. This wand had been waiting a long time. Vinewood and dragon heartstring, Ollivander murmured. 10 3/4 inches. Unyielding. Rather unusual combination. Very good for transfiguration and charm work, but demands precision. Try this. Hermione took the wand. The moment her fingers closed around it, she felt warmth spread through her body. Her magic recognized the wand, or the wand recognized her magic. The distinction didn't matter. This was hers. She waved it experimentally. Silver sparks shot from the tip, warm and bright. Oh, excellent, Ollivander breathed. Very excellent indeed. Curious, though. Very curious. What's curious? Lily asked. Dragon heartstring wands are powerful but temperamental. They tend to bond with wizards who have a strong will, a need for control. But Vinewood, he looked at Hermione intently. Vinewood chooses those who have higher purpose, great ambitions, a seeker of new horizons. And at such a young age, yes, very curious. Very interesting indeed. Hermione barely heard him. She was staring at her wand, her first real wand, feeling the magic hum through the wood. Harry went next. His wand selection was faster, only 5 attempts before Ollivander handed him Holly and Phoenix Feather, 11 inches, nice and supple. The wand accepted Harry immediately, sending gold sparks into the air. Interesting, Ollivander said again. Very interesting. Holly is a protective wood, associated with defense against evil, and Phoenix Feather, he glanced between the two children. You both have powerful cores, dragon and phoenix. Complementary, but different. Like you. They paid for the wands, 7 galleons each, and left the shop. Both children were clutching their wands like treasures, barely listening as James explained the underage magic restrictions, the trace, the rules about using magic outside school. Hermione felt transformed. She had a wand. She was really going to Hogwarts. In less than 2 weeks, she'd be learning actual magic, studying subjects she'd only read about, becoming the witch she was meant to be. But part of her was terrified. Hogwarts meant exposure. It meant being surrounded by people who knew she was the girl who lived, who'd judge her, who'd expect things from her she wasn't sure she could deliver. It's going to be okay, Harry said quietly, sensing her anxiety the way he always did. How do you know? Because I'll be there with you. We're doing this together. What if we're in different houses? Harry shrugged. Then we're in different houses. Doesn't change anything. You're still my sister. I'm still your brother. Nothing changes that. Hermione held her coin, the one that warmed when Harry held his, and felt reassured. They were going to Hogwarts together. Whatever happened, they'd face it as a team. She was ready. She had to be. September 1st, 1991. Platform 9 3/4 King's Cross Station was chaos. Muggles rushed past with luggage. Announcements echoed from overhead speakers, and somewhere between platforms 9 and 10, hidden from non-magical eyes, was the entrance to platform 9 3/4. James pushed a trolley loaded with Hermione's trunk. Lily pushed Harry's. Both children walked between their parents, owls in cages atop their luggage. Hedwig, Harry's snowy owl, and Crookshanks, Hermione's half-Kneasel ginger cat that she'd begged for after meeting him in Magical Menagerie. You remember how to get through? James asked for the 3rd time. Walk straight at the barrier between platforms 9 and 10, Harry recited. Don't stop, don't hesitate, just walk through. And if anything happens, Lily started. We'll contact you through the coins, Hermione finished. She touched the coin hanging around her neck. Mum, we'll be fine. But Lily looked like she was about to cry. Her babies were going to Hogwarts. They were leaving home. Yes, they'd be back for Christmas, and yes, they could send owls, but this was the first real separation since Hermione had been adopted 10 years ago. They reached the barrier. James went first, demonstrating. He walked purposefully toward the solid brick wall and vanished through it. Lily followed with Harry's trolley, then Harry, then finally Hermione. The moment she passed through the barrier, platform 9 3/4 materialized around her. The Hogwarts Express dominated the platform, a magnificent scarlet steam engine, smoke billowing from its chimney. Families crowded the platform, saying goodbye, loading trunks, calling last-minute instructions, and people were staring at her. Hermione felt it immediately, the weight of recognition, Whispers rippled through the crowd. Parents nudged their children and pointed. A group of older students openly gaped. "That's her," someone whispered. "The girl who lived. She's smaller than I expected. Is that really the scar?" On her hand, Harry moved closer to Hermione, his expression dark. "Ignore them," he muttered. But ignoring them was impossible. A witch in purple robes approached, smiling too widely. "Excuse me, dear, but are you Hermione Potter? Could I get your autograph for my son? He's starting Hogwarts this year, too." "Her name is Granger Potter," Harry interrupted. "And we're busy." James intercepted the woman smoothly, steering her away with polite but firm words. Lily gathered both children close. "Listen to me," Lily said quietly. "This is going to happen all year. People will recognize you, want things from you, treat you like a celebrity. You need to decide right now how you're going to handle it. Will you be polite? Will you ignore them? Will you tell them to leave you alone?" Hermione swallowed hard. "I don't know." "Then figure it out quickly," Lily advised gently. "Because once you're on that train, Harry and I can't protect you anymore. You'll have to protect yourself." They loaded the trunks onto the train, James using magic to levitate them into the luggage compartment, while Hermione and Harry watched. Other families did the same. Wands out, casual displays of magic that made Hermione's fingers itch for her own wand. "You have everything?" James asked. "Wands, money, owl treats, extra quills." "Dad, we're fine," Harry said, laughing. "We're only going to be gone a few months." "I know. James's voice caught. He pulled both children into a fierce hug. "Take care of each other. Look out for one another. And remember, you're Potters. You're brave, you're kind, and you don't let anyone make you feel less than you are." Lily was crying openly now. She hugged Hermione first, holding her tight. "I love you so much, sweetheart. Be safe, be smart. And remember, knowledge is power, but friendship is strength. Don't lose yourself in books so much that you forget to make friends." "I won't," Hermione promised, though she suspected she absolutely would. Lily hugged Harry next. "Protect your sister, but don't be overbearing. She can take care of herself." "I know," Harry said, "but I'm still going to protect her." "I know you are," Lily said fondly. The train whistle blew, a warning that departure was imminent. Students scrambled to board. Parents called final goodbyes. Hermione and Harry climbed onto the train, leaning out the window to wave. "We love you," Lily called. "Write every week," James added. "We will," both children chorused. The train lurched forward. The platform began to move past them, parents waving, younger siblings jumping up and down, the barrier growing distant. Hermione watched her parents until she couldn't see them anymore, then pulled back into the corridor. "We should find a compartment," Harry said. They walked down the narrow corridor, peeking into compartments. Most were already full. Groups of friends reuniting, older students who'd saved seats for each other. Finally, near the back of the train, they found an empty compartment. Harry helped Hermione lift her trunk onto the luggage rack, then settled into a seat by the window. Hermione sat across from him, already pulling out Hogwarts, a history from her bag. "You're not seriously going to read right now," Harry said. "I want to review the house system before we're sorted," Hermione said. "I need to understand what each house values, what they look for." "We'll probably both end up in Gryffindor," Harry said confidently. "Like Mum and Dad. It's where brave people go, and we're brave." "But what if we're not?" Hermione's anxiety spiked. "What if the hat sees something in us that doesn't fit Gryffindor? What if we're separated?" "Then we're separated," Harry said, though his casual tone didn't quite hide his own worry. "We'll still see each other. It's not like different houses can't be friends." Before Hermione could respond, the compartment door slid open. A boy with red hair and freckles stood there, looking embarrassed. Sorry, but everywhere else is full. Mind if I sit here?" "Of course," Hermione said immediately, relieved to have distraction from her spiraling thoughts. "I'm Hermione Granger Potter. This is my brother Harry." "Ron Weasley," the boy said, dragging his trunk into the compartment. He did a double take, staring at Hermione. "Wait, Granger Potter? You're her, the girl who lived." "Yes," Hermione said, trying to keep her voice level. "But I'd prefer if we could just—" "That's wicked," Ron interrupted, his eyes wide. "You actually survived the killing curse? My brothers told me about it, but I didn't think. Blimey. That's brilliant. It's not brilliant, Harry said, his tone cooling. Her parents died. Ron flushed. Right. Sorry. I just meant it's amazing that you survived. It's fine, Hermione said, though she felt the familiar discomfort of being treated like a story instead of a person. What about you? Do you have siblings at Hogwarts? Ron's embarrassment transformed into enthusiasm. He had 5 older brothers. Bill and Charlie had already graduated, Percy was a prefect, and Fred and George were 4th years. They're twins. Complete nightmares. They've been pranking me all summer about what happens to first years. Told me we have to wrestle a troll as part of the sorting. That's not true, Hermione said immediately. The sorting is done by the sorting hat. It reads your mind and determines which house suits you best, based on your values and personality. Ron stared at her. How do you know that? Hermione held up her book. Hogwarts, a History. Chapter 4 covers the sorting ceremony in detail, including testimonies from students across all 4 houses about their experiences. You've read the whole thing? 3 times. Ron looked at Harry. Is she always like this? Always, Harry confirmed, grinning. She's been studying for Hogwarts since she could read. They talked for the rest of the journey. Ron was easy to talk to, funny, casual, completely unpretentious. He asked about Quidditch, which Harry could discuss for hours. He asked about what it was like growing up with the famous Lily Potter as a mother, which led to stories about pranks James played and potions Lily brewed. He didn't ask invasive questions about Hermione's survival or her scar or the prophecy. Whether through natural tact or because Harry subtly steered conversations away from those topics, Ron treated Hermione like a normal person. It was refreshing. The lunch trolley came around. Ron pulled out sandwiches his mother had packed. They looked slightly squashed but homemade. Harry bought an enormous pile of sweets from the trolley and shared them with everyone. Hermione tried Bertie Bott's every flavor beans and got a vomit-flavored one on her first attempt, which made both boys laugh hysterically. I don't see what's funny about tasting vomit, Hermione said, though she was trying not to smile. Your face, Ron gasped. You looked so betrayed by the bean. Other students knocked on the compartment throughout the journey, some wanting to meet the girl who lived, others just looking for seats. Each time, Harry positioned himself between Hermione and the door, friendly but protective. Most people took the hint and moved on. As the train traveled north, the landscape outside the windows changed from city to countryside to rugged hills. The sun set, painting the sky orange and purple. Students began changing into their school robes in their compartments. We should change too, Hermione said, pulling out her new robes, black with the Hogwarts crest but no house colors yet. Ron left to give them privacy. When he returned, all 3 were dressed in proper school robes, looking like actual Hogwarts students instead of children playing dress-up. We're really doing this, Harry said, staring out at the darkening landscape. We're really going to Hogwarts. Are you nervous? Hermione asked. Terrified, Harry admitted, but also excited. Hermione felt the same way. Terror and excitement mixed together until she couldn't tell them apart. The train began to slow. Through the window, Hermione could see a station platform, lanterns glowing in the darkness. Students were gathering their things, chattering excitedly. First years over here, a booming voice echoed across the platform. They'd arrived at Hogwarts. The boats across the lake, the man calling for first years was enormous, at least twice as tall as a normal person, with a wild beard and kind eyes. Hagrid, Hermione remembered from her reading, keeper of keys and grounds at Hogwarts, friend to Harry's parents. Come on, follow me, Hagrid called. Any more first years? Mind your step, now. First years follow me. The first years, nervous, excited, clutching wands and books, followed Hagrid down a steep, narrow path. It was dark, the path lit only by Hagrid's lamp. Students stumbled occasionally. Someone tripped and nearly fell into a bush. Then, they turned a corner, and Hermione gasped. Hogwarts Castle rose above them on the far side of a vast black lake. Towers soared into the night sky. Windows glowed golden with firelight. The castle's reflection shimmered on the lake's surface, perfect and beautiful and completely magical. No more than 4 to a boat, Hagrid called, pointing to a fleet of small boats at the water's edge. Hermione, Harry, and Ron climbed into one boat. A nervous boy with a toad climbed in after them. I'm Neville Longbottom, he said. I've lost my toad 3 times already. His name is Trevor. We'll help you find him if he runs off again, Hermione promised. Everyone in? Hagrid called. He had a boat to himself, his massive frame filling it completely. Right then, forward. The boats moved by themselves, gliding across the smooth lake. No one spoke. Everyone stared at the castle growing larger and larger as they approached. The towers seemed to touch the stars. The magic radiating from the building was palpable. Hermione felt it in her bones, warm and welcoming and powerful. This is real, she whispered. This is actually real. Harry squeezed her hand. We're here. We made it. They reached the far shore and disembarked. Hagrid led them up a flight of stone steps to the castle's entrance. Enormous oak doors that opened at Hagrid's knock. The entrance hall was huge, lit by flaming torches, with a marble staircase leading upward. A stern-looking witch in emerald robes waited for them. Professor McGonagall, Hermione recognized from photographs. Deputy Headmistress, Head of Gryffindor House, Transfiguration Professor. The first year's Professor McGonagall, Hagrid said. Thank you, Hagrid. I'll take them from here. McGonagall's sharp eyes swept over the nervous students. They lingered on Hermione for a moment. Recognition flickered in her expression. But she said nothing, treating Hermione exactly like every other first year. Welcome to Hogwarts, McGonagall said crisply. Before you take your seats in the Great Hall, you will be sorted into your houses. The 4 houses are Gryffindor, Hufflepuff, Ravenclaw, and Slytherin. While you are here, your house will be like your family. Your triumphs will earn you points. Any rule breaking will lose points. At the end of the year, the house with the most points wins the House Cup. She explained the sorting ceremony briefly. The hat, the 4 houses, the importance of house unity. Then she left to prepare the Great Hall, telling them to wait. The first years clustered together, whispering nervously. Hermione's anxiety spiked. What if the hat couldn't decide where she belonged? What if she wasn't brave enough for Gryffindor, smart enough for Ravenclaw, loyal enough for Hufflepuff? What if the hat put her in Slytherin, the house that valued ambition and cunning and had produced more dark wizards than any other? You're panicking, Harry murmured. He'd moved close to her, speaking low enough that only she could hear. I can feel it through the coin. Stop panicking. What if we're separated? Then, we're separated. Doesn't change anything. You're still my sister. What if I'm put in Slytherin? Harry looked at her seriously. Then you'll be the best Slytherin in history. You'll change what that house means. And I'll still be your brother. Hermione wanted to believe him, but the fear was consuming. Fear of inadequacy, fear of separation, fear of being exposed as a fraud who'd survived through luck rather than worthiness. McGonagall returned. Form a line and follow me. They walked through enormous double doors into the Great Hall. The sorting ceremony. The Great Hall was magnificent. Thousands of candles floated in midair above 4 long tables where older students sat, watching the first years enter. The ceiling was enchanted to look like the night sky. Stars glittered, clouds drifted past, the moon glowed silver. Hermione knew from her reading that the ceiling was bewitched to look like the sky outside, that it was described in Hogwarts, a history as one of the castle's most impressive enchantments. But knowing about it and seeing it were different things. It was breathtaking. McGonagall led them to the front of the hall. A stool sat there, and on the stool was a hat, patched, frayed, dirty, and very old. The sorting hat. Everyone watched in silence. Then the hat opened a rip near its brim, a mouth, and began to sing. The song explained the 4 houses, Gryffindor for the brave, Hufflepuff for the intelligent, Slytherin for the ambitious. It promised to look into their minds, find their true nature, place them where they belonged. When the song ended, applause erupted. McGonagall unrolled a scroll. When I call your name, you will sit on the stool and place the hat on your head. Abbot Hannah, a blonde girl, stumbled forward, sat on the stool, and put on the hat. After a moment's pause, the hat shouted, Hufflepuff. The Hufflepuff table exploded in cheers. Hannah ran to join them, beaming. The sorting continued. Bones, Susan, became a Hufflepuff. Boot, Terry, became a Ravenclaw. Brocklehurst, Mandy, went to Ravenclaw as well. Then, Granger Potter, Hermione. Silence fell. Every eye in the Great Hall turned to stare. Hermione walked forward on shaking legs. She could hear whispers. That's her, the girl who lived. She survived you-know-who. The attention was suffocating. She sat on the stool. McGonagall placed the hat on her head, and it fell over her eyes, blocking out the hall, the stairs, everything. A small voice spoke in her ear. Well, well. Hermione Granger Potter. The girl who lived. I've been waiting to sort you. Hermione said nothing, too nervous. Let me see, the hat mused. Difficult. Very difficult. Plenty of courage, I see. A willingness to face danger for those you love. That speaks to Gryffindor. But there's a mind here. Oh, yes, extraordinary intelligence. You could achieve great things in Ravenclaw. They would value your brilliance. Please put me in Gryffindor, Hermione thought desperately. With Harry, please. Ah, loyalty, the hat said. You value family above all else. That's Hufflepuff territory. But there's something else here, isn't there? Ambition. A driving need to prove yourself, to become powerful enough to survive what's coming. That's Slytherin's domain. No, not Slytherin. Why not? The hat asked curiously. You have the cunning for it. The determination. The willingness to do what must be done. And there's a piece of something in you. Something dark, something that whispers ambition and survival. You could be great in Slytherin, Hermione Granger Potter. Greater than you know. Because I don't want power for its own sake, Hermione thought fiercely. I want knowledge to protect my family. I want strength to survive. That's not ambition. That's necessity. Ah, the hat said. You want power to protect others, not to rule them. That's the difference, isn't it? Very well then. Better be Gryffindor! The last word was shouted to the hall. The Gryffindor table exploded in cheers and applause. Hermione pulled off the hat with shaking hands, handed it to McGonagall, and walked toward the Gryffindor table on numb legs. She'd been sorted. She was a Gryffindor. She was... Arms wrapped around her. Percy Weasley, Ron's older brother, was shaking her hand enthusiastically. Excellent. We got Potter's sister. Welcome to Gryffindor. Hermione sat at the table, barely processing congratulations from older students. She watched the rest of the sorting in a daze. Longbottom Neville was sorted into Gryffindor after nearly 5 minutes. A hat stall, meaning the hat couldn't easily decide. He looked relieved when he joined their table. Malfoy Draco was sorted into Slytherin before the hat even touched his head. The boy smirked as he walked to the Slytherin table. Then, Potter Harry. The whispers started immediately. Harry Potter? The girl who lived's brother? James and Lily Potter's son? Harry walked forward confidently, sat on the stool and put on the hat. Less than 10 seconds passed before the hat shouted, Gryffindor! Harry grinned, pulled off the hat, and strode to the Gryffindor table. He sat beside Hermione, ignoring everyone else. We're in the same house, he said. I was so scared we'd be separated, Hermione admitted. I told you it would be fine. The sorting continued. Weasley Ronald joined them at Gryffindor. The entire Gryffindor table cheered, welcoming another Weasley. Ron sat across from Harry and Hermione, looking happy and relieved. When the sorting finished, Dumbledore stood. The elderly wizard with the long silver beard smiled at the students, his blue eyes twinkling. Welcome, Dumbledore said. Welcome to another year at Hogwarts. Before we begin the feast, I have a few start-of-term notices. First years should note that the forest on the grounds is forbidden to all students. And a few of our older students would do well to remember that as well. His eyes twinkled toward the Weasley twins, who grinned unrepentantly. I have also been asked by Mr. Filch to remind you that magic is not permitted in corridors between classes. Quidditch trials will be held in the second week of term. And finally, his expression grew serious. I must tell you that this year, the third-floor corridor on the right-hand side is out of bounds to everyone who does not wish to die a very painful death. Nervous laughter rippled through the hall. Hermione frowned. What kind of headmaster announced a death trap without explanation? Now, Dumbledore said, his smile returning. Let the feast begin. Food appeared on the tables, roast beef, chicken, pork chops, potatoes, everything imaginable. The students dove in, talking and laughing. Hermione ate mechanically, still processing everything. She was at Hogwarts. She was a Gryffindor. Harry was beside her. Everything had worked out, so why did she still feel terrified? The first night, Gryffindor Tower after the feast, the Gryffindor prefects led the first years out of the Great Hall and up a marble staircase. Then another staircase. Then another. Hogwarts has 142 staircases, Percy Weasley announced as they climbed. Some are wide and grand, some are narrow and rickety. Some lead somewhere different on Friday than they do on Monday. You'll need to remember that. The staircases moved while they were climbing them. Hermione grabbed Harry's arm as the staircase beneath them lurched to the left, depositing them on a different landing. "That's going to take getting used to," Ron muttered. They passed corridors lined with portraits, paintings of people who moved and talked, waving at students, gossiping with each other. They passed doors that weren't really doors, walls that weren't really walls. The castle was enormous and confusing and wonderful. Finally, they reached a portrait of a very fat woman in a pink silk dress. "Password?" the woman asked. "Caput Draconis," Percy said. The portrait swung forward, revealing a hole in the wall, the entrance to Gryffindor Tower. They climbed through into the common room. It was a cozy, circular room with squashy armchairs, a fireplace crackling with warmth, and windows that looked out over the grounds. Tapestries hung on the walls, showing Gryffindor victories throughout history. Everything was decorated in scarlet and gold. "Boys' dormitories are up those stairs to the left," Percy announced. "Girls' dormitories are to the right. Your belongings have already been brought up. Get some rest. Breakfast is at 7:30. "Welcome to Gryffindor." The first-year girls climbed the spiral staircase to their dormitory. Hermione found her trunk at the foot of one of 5 four-poster beds. The other girls, Lavender Brown Parvati Patil, a girl named Sally Ann Perks, and a girl named Lily Moon, were already examining their beds, unpacking, chattering excitedly. "This is brilliant," Lavender said, bouncing on her bed. "I can't believe we're actually here." "Did you see the ceiling in the Great Hall?" Parvati asked. It looked like the sky. They talked for a while, comparing their sorting experiences, discussing which professors looked nice and which looked strict. Hermione participated minimally, unpacking her trunk, organizing her books on the bedside table. Lavender noticed the collection. "Blimey, how many books did you bring?" "Just the ones I might need," Hermione said. "Required texts, plus a few extras for reference." "You brought extra books?" Lavender looked baffled. Hermione decided not to mention that she'd also brought Defensive Magical Theory, a history of Hogwarts, and 3 other advanced texts. These girls already thought she was strange. Eventually, everyone changed into pajamas and climbed into bed. The lights dimmed magically. Hermione lay in her 4-poster bed, curtains drawn, and felt the weight of the day crash over her. She was at Hogwarts. In Gryffindor. The sorting was over. She'd survived the attention, the stares, the whispers. She was here. But the fear remained. Tomorrow, classes would start. Professors would expect things from her. Students would watch her, waiting to see if the girl who lived was as brilliant as her fame suggested, or just lucky. Hermione pulled out her coin and clutched it tightly. Warmth bloomed in her palm. Harry, 1 floor below in the boys' dormitory, holding his coin. "I'm here," the warmth said. "You're okay. We're together." Hermione held the coin until she fell asleep. The first week, classes and complications breakfast the next morning was chaos. The great hall filled with students eating, talking, owls swooping in with mail. Hermione sat with Harry and Ron at the Gryffindor table, studying her class schedule. "We have Transfiguration first," Hermione said, with Professor McGonagall. "Then, History of Magic, Charms before lunch, Potions after lunch with the Slytherins, and Defense against the Dark Arts at the end of the day." "You've memorized the schedule already?" Ron asked. "I memorized it last night." Ron looked at Harry. "Is she always like this?" "Always," Harry confirmed cheerfully. Transfiguration with Professor McGonagall was intimidating. The professor was strict, demanding, and made it clear from the first moment that she expected excellence. She started the lesson by transforming her desk into a pig and back again, demonstration of what they'd be learning. "Transfiguration is some of the most complex and dangerous magic you will learn at Hogwarts," McGonagall said. "Anyone messing around in my class will leave and not come back. You have been warned." She handed out matches and instructed them to turn the matches into needles. It was difficult, precise work. Most students produced matches that were slightly pointier or slightly silver but still clearly matches. Hermione concentrated fiercely, her wand moving in the exact pattern McGonagall had demonstrated. On her 3rd attempt, her match transformed into a perfect sharp needle. McGonagall examined it. "Excellent work, Miss Granger Potter. 5 points to Gryffindor." The other students stared. Someone muttered, "Of course the girl who lived is good at everything." Hermione pretended not to hear. History of Magic was the most boring class Hermione had ever experienced. Professor Binns was a ghost who droned on about goblin rebellions in a monotone voice that made students fall asleep within 15 minutes. Even Hermione, who loved learning, struggled to stay focused. Charms with Professor Flitwick was better. The tiny professor was enthusiastic and encouraging, teaching them the levitation charm, Wingardium Leviosa. Harry got his feather to float on the first try, grinning triumphantly. Hermione needed 3 attempts, but when her feather finally rose into the air, hovering steadily, Flitwick clapped his hands with delight. Wonderful. Both Potters showing natural talent. 10 points to Gryffindor, 5 each. Then came potions. The dungeon classroom was cold and dark, lit by greenish lamps. Shelves lined the walls, filled with jars of disturbing ingredients, pickled animals, dried plants, substances Hermione couldn't identify. The Slytherin students were already seated on one side of the room. Gryffindors took the other side. Professor Snape swept into the room, his black robes billowing dramatically. He was pale, with greasy black hair and cold black eyes. He took attendance, pausing when he reached Hermione's name. "Ah, yes," Snape said softly. "Hermione Granger Potter. Our new celebrity." The way he said celebrity made it sound like an insult. Snape's speech about potion making was beautiful. He described it as a subtle science and exact art, spoke about the beauty of simmering cauldrons and the delicacy of softly boiling ingredients. But then his eyes found Hermione again. "Miss Granger Potter," Snape said, "tell me, since you're famous, you must know everything already. What would I get if I added powdered root of asphodel to an infusion of wormwood?" Hermione's mind raced. She'd read about this, not in the first-year textbook, but in Magical Drafts and Potions, a more advanced text. "That would make the Draught of Living Death, sir, a very powerful sleeping potion." Snape's expression didn't change. "Correct, though I'm surprised you know that. It's not in your first-year text. Been doing extra reading, have we? Showing off?" "No, sir," Hermione said quietly. I like to be prepared." 5 points from Gryffindor for being an insufferable know-it-all, Snape said coldly. "Let's see if you're as clever with actual potion-making as you are with books." The lesson was a disaster for most students. They were making a simple potion to cure boils, but Neville somehow melted his cauldron. The potion splashed onto the floor, burning holes in students' shoes. Snape blamed Harry, who'd been helping Neville, and deducted more points from Gryffindor. Hermione's potion turned out perfectly. Snape examined it, found nothing wrong, and walked away without comment. "No praise, no points awarded. He hates you," Ron observed after class. "He hates everyone in Gryffindor," Harry said. "Did you see how much he favors the Slytherins?" But Hermione knew it was personal. Snape had targeted her specifically, called her a celebrity with contempt, taken points for answering his question correctly. She didn't understand why. Defense against the dark arts should have been their most important class. This was what they'd need to survive if Voldemort returned. But Professor Quirrell was a nervous, stuttering mess who smelled like garlic. He spent the entire first lesson reading from the textbook, jumping at shadows, refusing to make eye contact with students. When someone asked about his experience fighting dark creatures, Quirrell stammered something about a vampire in Romania and changed the subject. "This is useless," Hermione whispered to Harry as they left class. "He's not going to teach us anything practical." "Then we'll teach ourselves," Harry whispered back. Flying lessons. Hermione's Fear Thursday brought flying lessons, the one class Hermione had been dreading. Madam Hooch, the flying instructor, had them stand beside the school brooms laid out on the grass. The brooms were old, with twigs sticking out at odd angles. Hermione stared at hers with deep mistrust. "Now, stick your right hand over your broom and say, 'Up,'" Madam Hooch commanded. "Up," the students chorused. Harry's broom leapt into his hand immediately, as if eager to be held. Several other students' brooms rose part way or rolled over. Hermione's broom didn't move. "Up," Hermione said, more forcefully. The broom trembled, but remained on the ground. She tried 5 more times before the broom finally, reluctantly jumped into her hand. "Good," Madam Hooch said. "Now mount your brooms. Grip it tight. You don't want to slide off the end. When I blow my whistle, kick off from the ground. Hover for a moment, then lean forward and touch back down." Hermione mounted her broom. Her hands were sweating. She'd flown before. James and Lily had taught both children to fly on toy brooms at home, but she'd never enjoyed it. Heights terrified her. The loss of control terrified her. Flying felt like deliberately putting yourself in danger. Madam Hooch blew her whistle. Hermione kicked off weakly, rose about a foot off the ground, wobbled, and immediately touched back down. Harry, meanwhile, rose smoothly, hovered perfectly, and landed with the grace of someone who'd been flying his entire life. "Excellent, Mr. Potter," Madam Hooch called. "Natural talent." They practiced for the rest of the lesson. Hermione improved slightly. She could hover without wobbling by the end. But she hated every second. Her fear of heights made her tense, which made the broom respond poorly, which made her more scared, creating a terrible cycle. "You did fine," Harry said afterward, as they walked back to the castle. "I was terrible," Hermione said. "I could barely hover. You'll get better with practice." "What if I don't? What if I'm just bad at flying?" Harry shrugged. "Then you're bad at flying. You're brilliant at everything else. You can't be perfect at everything, Hermione." But Hermione wanted to be perfect at everything, because being imperfect meant being vulnerable. And being vulnerable meant being unprepared when danger came. The library, Hermione's sanctuary. Hermione discovered the library on the second day and immediately fell in love. It was enormous, thousands of books on thousands of shelves, with sections for every subject imaginable. Charms, transfiguration, potions, history, herbology, astronomy, and in the back, behind a rope barrier, was the restricted section. Books on advanced magic, dark magic, dangerous spells that first years weren't allowed to touch. Madame Pince, the librarian, was strict and protective of her books. She watched Hermione with hawk-like attention at first, suspicious of any student who might damage her precious collection. But when she saw how carefully Hermione handled books, how she read with reverence and took notes with precision, Madame Pince softened. "You may borrow up to 4 books at a time," Madame Pince told her. "Return them on time, in perfect condition, or face my wrath." Hermione borrowed 4 books immediately: A Beginner's Guide to Defensive Magic, The Theory of Transfiguration, 1,000 Magical Herbs and Fungi, and A History of Hogwarts Founders. She spent every spare moment in the library, before breakfast, during free periods, after dinner, before curfew. She read everything she could find about protective magic, about spells that could defend against dark wizards, about famous witches and wizards who'd survived impossible situations. Because someday, Voldemort would return. And when he did, she needed to be ready. Harry and Ron found her in the library one evening, surrounded by stacks of books, scribbling notes furiously. "You've been here for 3 hours," Harry said. "Come on, we're playing wizard's chess in the common room. I need to finish this chapter." "Hermione." Harry sat beside her. "You're going to make yourself sick. You barely eat at meals because you're reading. You stay up past midnight studying. You're exhausted. I need to be prepared." "For what?" "First-year exams. They're 9 months away." "For everything," Hermione said quietly. "Harry, I need to be ready." "When he comes back." "He's not coming back tomorrow," Harry interrupted gently. "You have time. Years, probably. You don't have to learn everything right now." "But what if I don't have time? What if he comes back next year? What if I'm not strong enough?" Harry took her hand. "The scarred one. Then we'll face it together. You and me." "But Hermione, you can't spend every moment preparing for a war that might not happen for a decade. You need to live too. Make friends. Have fun. Be 11. Hermione wanted to argue, but she was exhausted. Her eyes hurt from reading in dim light. Her hand cramped from taking notes. And Harry was right. She was 11 years old. The war could wait. "Okay," she said. "1 game of wizard's chess. Then I'm coming back to finish this chapter." "Deal," Harry said, grinning. They played chess until curfew. Hermione lost spectacularly. Ron was brilliant at chess, and even Harry had better instincts for strategy than she did. But she laughed when Ron's queen smashed Harry's knight to pieces. She forgot about Voldemort and prophecies and fear. For one evening, she was just a girl playing games with her brother and friend. It felt wonderful. Halloween. The Troll. October arrived with cold winds and rain. The castle's heating chimes kept the interior warm, but students bundled in robes and scarves when moving through corridors. Hermione's routine had settled. She attended classes, excelled at everything except flying, spent hours in the library, and studied constantly. She'd made a few friends. Neville was kind and nervous. Arvati and Lavender were friendly, if a bit gossip-focused. and Ron had become a fixture in her and Harry's lives. But she still felt like an outsider. Students stared at her in corridors. They whispered about her scar, about the night she survived, about whether she was really as brilliant as everyone said, or just famous for being lucky. The whispers hurt more than Hermione admitted. Halloween brought decorations to the Great Hall. Live bats, enormous carved pumpkins, orange and black streamers that danced through the air. The feast would be spectacular, everyone said. Hermione looked forward to it despite her anxiety. But in Charms class that morning, something shifted. They were learning Wingardium Leviosa again. More practice, making sure everyone could master it. Ron was paired with Hermione. He still hadn't managed to levitate his feather, and his frustration was mounting. "You're saying it wrong," Hermione said, trying to help. "It's Wingardium Leviosa." "You're saying Wingardium Leviosa." "I'm doing it right," Ron snapped. "You're clearly not, or it would work. Would you stop being such an insufferable know-it-all?" Ron exploded. "Not everyone is perfect like you." The words hit like a slap. Hermione felt her throat tighten, her eyes sting with tears. She was trying to help. She was just trying to help. She didn't cry in class. She held it together until the lesson ended, then fled. Harry found her 10 minutes later in an abandoned girls' bathroom on the second floor. She was sitting on the floor, arms wrapped around her knees, crying. "Hermione," Harry crouched beside her. "Ron's an idiot." "He didn't mean it." "Yes, he did," Hermione said. "Everyone thinks I'm insufferable. I hear them whispering. The girl who lived thinks she's better than everyone. She's so bossy. She only got famous because she was lucky. Maybe they're right." "They're not right," Harry said fiercely. "You're brilliant. You're not showing off. You're just being yourself." And Ron was frustrated and took it out on you, which was wrong. He knows it was wrong. He'll apologize. "I don't want his apology. I just want," Hermione's voice broke. "I just want to be normal. I don't want to be the girl who lived. I don't want people staring and whispering. I just want to learn and be left alone." Harry sat beside her on the bathroom floor. "I know, but you're not normal. You're extraordinary. And that's not a bad thing, even if it feels like it sometimes." They sat together in silence. Hermione cried until she had no tears left, then wiped her face and tried to compose herself. "I'm not going to the Halloween feast," she said. "I'll just stay here." "Hermione, please. I just want to be alone for a while." Harry hesitated, clearly torn between staying with his sister and respecting her need for space. Finally, he nodded. "Okay, but I'm checking on you in an hour, and I'm bringing you food from the feast." "Thank you," Hermione whispered. Harry left. Hermione stayed in the bathroom, feeling sorry for herself, wishing she could be anyone other than who she was. She was still there when the troll arrived. The bathroom door exploded inward. A creature 12 feet tall ducked through the doorway. Gray skin, massive body, small head, carrying a wooden club the size of a tree trunk. A mountain troll, Hermione's mind supplied uselessly. Highly dangerous, immune to most spells. The troll saw her and roared. Hermione screamed. The troll swung its club. Hermione dove sideways, scrambling under a sink. The club smashed porcelain, sending shards flying. Water sprayed everywhere. "My wand," Hermione thought desperately. "Where's my wand?" It was in her robes, thank Merlin. She pulled it out with shaking hands. What spell could hurt a troll? Stunning spells wouldn't work. Troll skin was too thick. Fire might work, but she'd never practiced. The troll grabbed her ankle. Hermione screamed again, kicking desperately. The troll lifted her into the air, dangling her upside down. It raised its club, preparing to smash her against the floor. Then Harry burst through the door. Hermione! He didn't have his wand drawn, no time. He just ran at the troll and jumped on its back, grabbing its ears, shouting wordlessly. The troll dropped Hermione. She fell hard, the breath knocked from her lungs, and reached for Harry instead. Its massive hand closed around Harry's robes. "Wingardium Leviosa," Hermione shouted, pointing her wand at the troll's club. The club rose into the air. The troll looked confused, reaching for its weapon. Hermione made a sharp downward movement with her wand. The club dropped onto the troll's head with a sickening crunch. The troll swayed, eyes rolling back. Then it fell forward, unconscious, still holding Harry. Harry scrambled free. "Are you okay? You jumped on a troll," Hermione shouted. You could have been killed. So could you. Hermione stopped. They stared at each other, adrenaline fading, the reality of what just happened sinking in. We're alive, Harry said. We defeated a troll, Hermione said, half laughing, half crying. Then Professor McGonagall, Professor Snape, and Professor Quirrell burst into the bathroom. McGonagall stared at the unconscious troll, then at her students, her expression shifting from shock to fury. What on earth were you two thinking? You could have been killed. It's my fault, Professor, Hermione said immediately. I came here because I was upset, and I didn't know about the troll, and Harry came looking for me and saved my life. McGonagall's anger softened slightly. That was very brave, Mr. Potter. And quick thinking with the levitation charm, Miss Granger Potter. 5 points will be taken from each of you for being where you shouldn't have been. But you will each receive 10 points for your bravery and resourcefulness. Now go, both of you. Get to your dormitory. They fled, still shaking, still processing what had happened. In the common room, Ron was waiting. I heard you fought a troll. Is that true? Yes, Harry said. Ron looked at Hermione. I'm sorry. For what I said, I was a git. You're not insufferable. You're brilliant. And I was jealous. And I'm really, really sorry. Hermione could have held a grudge, but Ron had been genuinely worried. He'd told McGonagall where they were, had helped raise the alarm. And his apology was sincere. It's okay, Hermione said. Friends, Ron agreed, looking relieved. The three of them stayed up late, replaying the troll encounter, exaggerating details, laughing at the absurdity of it. Hermione had faced a mountain troll and survived. She'd used magic under pressure and won. Maybe she was stronger than she thought. Maybe she was ready for whatever came next. December. The mirror and the stone as autumn turned to winter. Rumors spread about something hidden at Hogwarts. Something in the forbidden third-floor corridor. Something guarded by a three-headed dog that students had glimpsed through the door. Hermione, Harry, and Ron became obsessed with discovering what was hidden. They researched constantly, piecing together clues. Hermione found references to Nicholas Flamel in a book, the creator of the Philosopher's Stone, a legendary object that produced the elixir of life. That's what's hidden, Hermione said, showing them the book. The Philosopher's Stone. It grants immortality. That's why it's so heavily guarded. Why hide it at Hogwarts? Ron asked. Because someone tried to steal it from Gringotts, Harry said slowly. Remember the break-in over summer? The vault that was broken into the same day we visited. It must have been the stone. And Dumbledore moved it here for safekeeping, Hermione finished. But if someone's trying to steal it, then we need to protect it, Harry said firmly. They watched Professor Snape carefully. The man limped, favoring one leg. He'd been bitten by something. His robes were torn. He was clearly involved. Christmas brought snow and decorations, and most students leaving for the holidays. Hermione and Harry stayed at Hogwarts. They could have gone home, but Dumbledore had asked them to stay. He had something to show them, he said. On Christmas morning, Hermione woke to find presents at the foot of her bed. Books from Lily, a new quill set from James, sweets from Ron, and a package wrapped in paper so thin it was nearly invisible. She unwrapped it carefully. Inside was a cloak, silvery, fluid, like liquid starlight. A note fell out. This belonged to your birth father, David Granger. Use it well. Merry Christmas. The handwriting was unfamiliar. Hermione touched the cloak wonderingly, then draped it over herself. She vanished. An invisibility cloak, extraordinarily rare, belonging to her birth father. But how? David Granger had been a Muggle. He couldn't have owned a magical cloak unless someone had given it to him. Unless Dumbledore or someone else had tried to protect the Grangers before Voldemort attacked. Hermione wore the cloak for the rest of Christmas, exploring the castle invisibly, watching people without being seen. She felt powerful, protected. That night, she and Harry used the cloak together. It was large enough to cover both of them, and explored the castle. They found a room with a magnificent mirror. Harry looked into it and gasped. What do you see? Hermione whispered. Mum and Dad, Harry said. Standing right there, and your birth parents. All four of them together, smiling. Hermione looked into the mirror. She saw the same thing. James and Lily Potter standing beside David and Helen Granger. Her two families united. Everyone alive, everyone safe, everyone smiling at her with love. The mirror of Erised, a voice said behind them. They spun. Dumbledore stood there, smiling gently. It shows us the deepest desire of our hearts, Dumbledore explained. You see your families whole and safe, a beautiful desire, but a dangerous one. The mirror gives us neither knowledge nor truth. Men have wasted away before it, entranced by what they see. Do not return here. Yes, sir, they chorused. Dumbledore's eyes twinkled. Your father's cloak, Miss Granger Potter. I believe it was time it was returned to you. Use it wisely. He knew. Of course he knew. Dumbledore knew everything. The spring term brought exams and stress and mounting evidence that someone was trying to steal the stone. Professor Quirrell seemed increasingly nervous. Snape seemed increasingly suspicious. Something was going to happen. And when it did, Hermione knew she'd be right in the middle of it. Because that's what the girl who lived did. She survived. Let us know what you'd like to see next. The end.